Does music theory have rules? A simple question without a straightforward answer. If you're asking, can I go down to the International Library of Music Theory and check out a book that has all of the laws that govern music? No, you can't. That book doesn't exist. Music theorists aren't some kind of congressional body that make musical laws, although that's what some theorists seem to think that we do. Music theorists are also not some sort of judiciary panel reviewing every piece of music for its legality, although that's what some theorists seem to think that we do. So, are there rules? Kinda, and those rules can be ranked on a range of rigidity. So, on the one side of the spectrum, we have the unflinching rules. These are largely immutable, loopholes notwithstanding. First, there are the rules of limitations. Some highlights here include instruments don't have that note, humans must breathe, and fingers don't work that way. We've also got the rules of physics. Some things are constant because the universe says so. You can't decide that the second partial of your harmonic series is a major ninth. Less rigid than the rules of limitations in physics, we have the rules of style. Certain musical styles aim to attain a certain aesthetic, and they use rules to achieve it. Counterpoint has rules, quite a few of them. Don't double the leading tone, don't use a melodic tritone, no parallel fifths, ever. Those are bad. These are commonly thrown around as rules of all of music, but they're actually rules of one particular style. But you can still break them. J.S. Bach used at least 17 parallel fifths over the course of his career. No one is going to mark you off for breaking the rules of counterpoint. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the completely subjective. This would include any set of emotional words like happy, sad, terrifying, or vague descriptive words like bright, warm, muddy, burgundy. These are largely a matter of opinion to a particular listener. What I call shrill, you may call shimmering. Quite an unbelievable amount of factors go into your subjective feelings about music. If I want to write a sad piece, there are no rules that govern how I would go about doing that. Sadness is subjective to me as a person. Furthermore, emotions as a color have an infinite number of shades. But I can hear you saying, a good number of people, though, would definitely agree that minor is sad. And that is because it's a common convention. And by convention, I mean like a practice or a custom, not like Comic-Con. There are things that are so common, it's like they're a rule, but they're not. Like the order of the alphabet, or the fact that maps point north. There's no rule that says they have to be in that order in that orientation. Within music, there are a few species of conventions as well. Even the idea of what makes a piece or a song good or bad is typically based on convention. And that convention is largely dependent on time in history, geographical location, day of the week, and probably the Spotify algorithm. First up, we've got conventions of style or genre. If I say rock band, a certain number of instruments immediately comes to mind. But there's no rule that says that those particular instruments have to be in a rock band. A banjo is not conventionally a rock band instrument, it's conventionally a bluegrass instrument. But there's no rule that a banjo can't be in a rock band, it's just not conventional. Some things can become conventional if they happen enough. For example, it was not conventional for a trombone to be in a rock band, but then ska happened. And it's not just instrumentation. Chord progressions are largely the result of style conventions. Baroque chord sequences were more progressive. They had a start and an end point. They went from here to there. Modern chord sequences are largely made up of loops. Neither one is right or wrong. Neither one is a rule or breaking a rule. They're just conventions. If I wanted to write a song that sounded Baroque, though, I couldn't just use a whole bunch of jazz chords. I would have to use Baroque conventions in order to achieve my goal. Then you'll hear people saying things like, this note wants to go here, this chord wants to go there. No, it doesn't. It's a note. It's inanimate. It wants nothing. It has no desires whatsoever. What we actually mean by this is that this note tends to go here, and so it's aptly called a tendency tone. The danger becomes when people try to enforce tendency tones as if they are rules. Does the leading tone typically resolve up to the tonic? Yes. But does it have to? No. And going against that particular tendency can be refreshing. And that's why it's really nice to know these conventions. Conventions create expectation, and subverting expectation can create a memorable effect. What we call things is also a convention. All of our music terminology is made up and then commonly agreed upon. It doesn't have to be called a major chord. We could have called it anything that we want, but we commonly agree that it's called a major chord. If I just went around calling it a flibberty-gibbet chord, I could do that, but you would have no clue what I'm talking about. So it's very convenient for us to have a common nomenclature with which we can communicate with each other. But again, naming is a convention and not a rule. What we call things can change over the course of time. What we call the notes, for example, has changed a number of times over the course of the years. And I mean their actual note names, not their solmization names, because that's a can of worms we just don't have time to open. And finally, right in the middle of the spectrum, we have the good ideas. They're not rules of limitations. They're also not conventions that they just happen because we like the way they sound. These are really just nuggets of wisdom. It's a good idea to not make your soprano sing a sustained high C on a pianissimo. If you want your oboes and flutes to be heard, it's a good idea to not give them a middle C when the entire orchestra is playing together. Trombones have a sliding mechanism, and so it's just a really good idea to not give them this particular passage. There's no one stopping you from using a shrieking goat in your piece, but I have found personally that their attendance habits are unreliable at best. The point of this entire spectrum, of course, is that music theory has no rules in that sense. And even when there are rules, you can break them. No one can tell you how to write your piece. Sometimes music theorists will try to grade music based on some imagined rubric. Even worse is when people try to discredit entire genres using music theory as a weapon to, quote, prove it. But when music theory is functioning properly, it examines every piece of music on its own terms. Music theory is a collection of analytical tools. There's no hierarchy. So the next time that someone tries to tell you that music has rules and you must follow them, you can just show them this video. And if you do decide to use a shrieking goat as a compositional device, please send me a video. I would love to see that. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're new to this channel, I do videos on music theory, music composition, and music history. So if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more videos. If you would like to be notified of when a new video has come out, make sure to join my email list, where I'll let you know about new video releases as well as other free musical resources. And if you really like the work that I do and would like to support it and see more of it, come join the community over on Patreon. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.